Hello, lovely humans, and thank you for joining me in this creepy episode of Crawl Error. My name is Jamie Alberico. I'm a technical SEO consultant. I spend a lot of my time creeping around those spooky corners of enterprise websites, looking at strange behaviors. I'm here to talk to you today in an unfortunate sequel about some ghosts and server logs. For those of you who don't follow myself or Dan Taylor on Twitter, you may have missed our first misadventure in recording this, where the servers actually stole this talk from us. They spirited them away to a land of corrupted save files. So I am coming to you again, unfortunately without the charisma and savvy of dear Dan Taylor, but we will talk to you about what it's like when you move into a new site. We've all been there. We've all got that new fantastic gig, or we're trying to, and it's nice, it's spacious, there's content in every nook and cranny, but you keep hearing strange bumps in the night. Something isn't quite right on that. This GIF right here is actually real footage of me working in-house in some enterprise and going, what was that? Inevitably followed by a series of chimes going off my phone because I was being pinged by whatever alert service was in play. You could see Search Console showing us, strange behaviors as well, unexpected things, and that should not move like that. So when we're faced with these new situations in our spooky houses, it is time to consult some ancient tomes and time to read the server logs. So today, we're going to be looking at the lore, how we summon the logs, and how to divine the logs. And that means the ancient art of divination, parsing out data and making good decisions from asking some good questions. Let's start with our lore. We want to answer three basic things. What is Googlebot? How does it behave? And what does it want? Googlebot, we think of as this monolithic beast. We think of all praise be Googlebot, because every SEO feels like we are Google employees who are not employed by Google, but our performance reviews come from the search engine, and they are never as positive as one would hope. Googlebot itself is simply just this user agent. It's a thing asking. It's a thing making a request. I have a little sample of what that user agent looks like down here, where you see the purple Chrome YXZ. This is a placeholder because Googlebot will update to a new user agent as they become available. I believe 86 just freshly rolled out on us. Googlebot isn't alone. This little bump in the night is one of many microservices used to create search results. We have everything from that crawl queue, the stack of the impossible, and things for them to get to eventually, which is something every SEO can relate to as well, a stack of projects we hope to get to eventually. Our crawler, so the act of doing things, our processor, the act of analyzing this data, very much like we are now. Our renderer, where we put these concepts together, maybe in a deck, in a presentation like I am right now. And finally to the index, which is the ears of people like you, for those who want to hear more stories and tales and creepy server logs in the night. It's available. So what does this creepy crawly user agent serve? It's a requester of URIs, and it feeds them into the gaping maw of Google's web rendering service. If you guys aren't familiar with the gaping maw, you should play more D&D, because I feel like every monster in 5e has a gaping maw, and they're all truly terrifying. Luckily for us, this one is a little easier to figure out. We know what its point is, what it wants to serve. It's trying to go out and grab all the resources necessary and put them together so we can build your page, so that Googlebot can experience your content just as users would experience your content. This is a lovely quote from one of the software engineers at Google talking about the role of Chrome in Googlebot's web rendering service. All right, now that we know a little bit more about this beast, let's learn about how it behaves. So Googlebot crawls in three ways. It likes to check in on content that's currently indexed and ranked. If something was serving a user intent very well, they want to keep it in the SERP, but they also want to make sure that it's still serving that user intent. Has the content changes been updated? Perhaps it doesn't quite match anymore. They're going to check back in. It also wants to discover new content, say content that's in that queue they found from sitemaps, they found from SEOs like you submitting things in Search Console. And they'll also discover content via referring links. It's very important to put a little asterisk next to this one. When we look at how we want to keep Googlebot away from our content, we want them out of staging. We don't want them to see X, Y, or Z. Robots.txt does not work for that third behavior pattern. When Googlebot requests this content, it does not check the robots.txt prior. And that means that if it crawls it and then you put a no index tag and block everything, it's never going to come back, because when it checks back in behavior pattern number 1, well, that obeys the robots.txt first. So it's important to know our order of operations. There's little nuances to this creature, little bits of lore that can help us understand how to make our site better for it and ultimately for our users. So Googlebot is a shapeshifter. We know that it uses a browser engine called Blink, and this is where it manipulates the viewport, the device type that it's coming from. As of 2020, everyone gets mobile by default, and that is really for the Google team themselves. The tech debt that comes with storing trillions upon trillions of web pages is vast, dark, and deep, my friends. And if the user intent can only be answered in a full desktop experience, then, well, it's not really serving users, as most are searching on mobile devices. But it's also a lot to store. And why store such big, bulky entities as desktop rendered web page when someone else is out there willing to provide that same information in a more sleek mobile form? Priority 0 for Googlebot is to be polite. That's weird to think about. It's weird to think about a polite ghost in our house. But the search engine, who ultimately makes their money from our hard work, it's designed to be a good citizen of the web, because if it takes down your site, we're all going to have problems. So when it's pinging your site, it is keeping a regular pulse point on your response codes. If it sees a lot of server errors coming back, 500 means something is wrong, and it's going to go ahead and pull back from engaging with your servers, because it doesn't want to take those down. It wouldn't be a good time for anybody involved. So by paying close attention to that, we can know it's going to adapt its crawl rate. It experienced a lot of those errors. It's going to remove content from the index because it doesn't want to send users to a broken page. It doesn't serve anybody. So we know that it wants to be polite. We know that it wants a return on investment. Google invests money. The most expensive part of your site is all of that JavaScript. It was the most expensive facet of the internet in 2019, was compiling and parsing out this JavaScript. It's doing this because it wants something back out of it. This isn't pure altruism. Deal with the devil's always got something on the side, Alright, now that we know about this beastie, let's talk about how we summon those server logs. What are they? We have to start there. Know how to get them, where to get them from, and how to read the Latin and understand what they mean. Server logs are a source of truth. In the chaos of the internet today, these are a dear diary of every response made by any server in your stack, saying, "Dear diary, today at 1:17 p.m. Eastern Time, Googlebot requested this URI. They used this user agent. This is how quickly I responded." This information is really used for diagnostics. It helps the DevOps team keep your site up and running. And if you have not, don't hug them, but if you have not thanked your DevOps folk for keeping your website up in the chaos of the modern web, you should. Don't hug them. It's 2020. That's worse than being punched. But those folks, the same ones that you should probably go show some gratitude to, because that's a brutal job, guys. If you ever thought being on call for a site launch was bad, try being on call all the time, because you're one of 2 people who keeps a worldwide network of servers going. These are the people we need to go talk to about how to get these server logs. And we really want them because, hey, half of what we do online is trusting random people on the internet. Like, you're listening to this because either you follow SALT.agency, you went to another VirtuaCon, saw the work they do, or you recognize me and my nonsense, Bob Ross style, blue hair, and you go, oh, I have a sense of trust in there. And unfortunately, that can be misguided. I know, spoilers, I know that I have been wrong on many occasions, and I will probably continue to be wrong. That's the thing about half of what we do. It's theoretical. We have constructs, we have ideas, we believe that X does Y. And when you get into the server's log, you can see that X does Y, but oh my, there were some unexpected things that came out of there as well. And having real evidence, documenting, observing real behavior patterns, and making a hypothesis is going to be the most effective way for you to make positive changes on your site. Someone's going to ask you why you need server logs. It's going to happen. You have crawl stats. I saw that. I saw that report once. I'm the VP of something important, and I logged into Search Console one time, and there's totally a report there that does that for you. It doesn't. This really ambiguous line chart is problematic for the most part. Please don't take it away. Don't get me wrong, Webmaster Team. I appreciate all of it. But it doesn't tell us a lot of important information here. So this report does not tell us just web pages. Every request is in here. Every image, every style sheet, every script, every page, every API endpoint. When you load your page and you look at how many resources are required, open DevTools and pop over to that network tab. To build your page, each and every one of those is part of this line chart. It doesn't give us details about which of those pages, APIs, images, scripts, all the things on our site are being crawled. That's just a line. It's not just information about only 200 response codes. We tend to, upon first blush, or as the very important VP of whatever who looked at this report one time will tell you, believe that these are only 200 response codes and these are only pages. Actually, a good chunk of that could be 404 pages. It could be 500 pages, but we don't really know. It doesn't reflect how many unique pages are crawled either. Is that crawl the same page 700 times? Is that 700 pages one time? And this line chart is misleading because sometimes people inherently want to think bigger is better. It's a line chart. Line charts go up, everybody has a good time. It's not true. It's not what we're looking for. And we really can't work on making it better with such a dainty data point as right here. So, now that we have our case, we know why we want these things and why they're important to us. We can look at how we put them together. So the first step in getting our logs is to identify where they all are. Hear me out, okay? It sounds a little bit strange. Inevitably someone will tell you, oh, yeah, the logs are over here. But take a little bit of a harder look. Do you have a CDN? Do you have multiple load balancers? Is every server that could respond to a public request represented in your logs? CDNs like Akamai have a built-in capability where you can plug right in and get those logs, but it's not automatic. You need to go in there and opt into that information. Akamai is great. CDNs are wonderful. They do a great job of helping balance out resources and make them available to lots of users. But if it's 70% of your hits, that means you're only making decisions on the 30% that are in that one server that you have access to. So it's very important to look at that infrastructure. Talk to those DevOps folks. Talk to the sysadmins. Listen to their stories and hear about the weird nooks and crannies that you wouldn't know to look in, because we want all of these together in one beautiful place. And that may mean we have to make requests, formal requests. We need to ask, is there already a platform in place? A lot of times, just because marketing isn't using it, because you're not using it, doesn't mean that tool doesn't exist. Rather than rebuilding the wheel, find the person who owns that. Find the person who's already relying on that data, because they're a valuable resource in helping you understand these things. We want to ask, is there a log management platform in place? We want to be clear. Logs can capture personal identifiable information. personal identification information, PII, and we do not want that. That is an area far beyond what tech SEOs or most SEOs care about. We're here for the bots. If you have to DIY, if you have a stack where there isn't that person available to master the Citadel for log files, you can DIY them. I've got links in this for different ways of getting that information out. And once we have it all assembled together, it's time for us to summon. So they've already been knocking around the house. We've already heard the thumps in the night. We've seen the strange behaviors. And after 15 emails, 3 different people chasing who knew what, where, and when, how to get these files, we have them. And to be honest, they're kind of terrifying. We have to translate our server logs into meaningful, human-friendly information. And there's some great tools out there. Again, this is a scenario where I don't recommend you try and rebuild the wheel. You are, in getting access to server logs, getting a great badge of honor from the teams that mine those. Treat it with respect. So we can use paid tools like Botify, Log, Sumologic, Splunk. DeepCrawl has some really great log analysis tools. There's freemium options from BigQuery, Screaming Frog. There's masochistic ones. If you just truly love to torture yourself with some Excel and Bash commands, you do you. You do you, boo. All right. Now that we have these together, let's go ahead and begin to break down what the server logs mean, because we got a big glimpse at lots of scary lines, and we have to be able to identify. Important before I start in here, I'm giving you an example, and depending on the team involved with the information they're grabbing, you may have different columns and values in place for these. I truly encourage you to know the definition to understand the mechanical way that this is identified. What is the parsing to capture this information as you move into it? When we assume what a value is, it can be a very precarious place, especially here in our server logs. But we'll start with basic one. Server IP. This is the name of the server that responded to the request. This is a self-identification, and that can be translated into the server name. The server name is a friendly name. It's typically used when we have a lot of load balancers. We've got different pieces in place all over the world, and sometimes we have to know if Omiya03 is just being a jerk and doesn't want to play. True story. This was a salty server that occasionally was like, I don't feel like doing AMP today. Just hard pass. Next up, we have the date and time of the request. And this is recent information. When did it happen? Next up, our requester's IP. So who made the request? I told you before, Googlebot is simply a user agent. This IP is a way of confirming that it is Googlebot, and we will get to that shortly. Next is the request method. This is a little bit more technical than most people want to get into, but is important to know when you start to troubleshoot, because there are different behaviors for a get versus post when it comes to caching. So our next piece will be our URI. This is the address that was requested. This is eye-opening information here. Many times when we've got scripts with very cool JavaScript functionalities, they create dynamic URLs, and when you hop in here and you start looking at the URIs, you begin to notice, oh, that should not exist. And things exist that you do not expect to exist. So next up, our host name, followed by the response code. Guys, if you don't know your response codes yet, make that your spooky Halloween resolution. Yeah? Next up is response size. So in the initial HTML parsed over to the requester, how big was that? Followed up by the response time, how many milliseconds did it take to answer that knock at the door and give the information requested? The beautiful beast right here is our user agent. So the identification, the name, the details about the requesting server. Finally up, if we have it, if it is one of the referring traffic crawl patterns, we'll have a referring URL as well. All right, now that we have all this information aggregated together, and we've taken the time, the deliberate intention to understand what each of these values means for our unique site, because they will vary, we can go ahead and begin to validate Googlebot itself. There's a couple of ways to do this. We can do it manually. If you don't have a ton of these coming in together, pretty consistently, that C block's always Googlebots. When we see a 66.249.66 dot, and the last one's called the D block, the A, B, and C, all the way through there, those are almost always Googlebots. You can kind of check those in bulk. And we do want to check these. I know it may sound a little bit silly to you, and just go, well, why don't I just say it's the user agent? Because anybody can pretend to be Googlebot. And if you're trying to diagnose significant technical issues on your site, you cannot do that with somebody who's pretending to be a bot mucking around in there. It's not going to help you make an informed decision or diagnose a significant problem. Less masochistic ways to bulk validate with some scripts. There are a ton of great work out there in GitHub. Go get on GitHub, guys. This will change your SEO world. And our third option, of course, is with those great tools that have a built-in functionality with them. Once we've validated Googlebot, we can begin to parse our log files in meaningful ways. We can begin to spot patterns and break things down. And ultimately, of all those functionalities, all those bits and pieces I just captured or walked through for you that are captured in our log file, there's 6 that are really going to change our world, and that is identifying our data source. So where in the stack is this coming from? The conditions that it must meet. I want hits where X happened, how we're going to parse it, how we're gathering it together. So what are we breaking it out as? Maybe I don't want to just go URL by URL because there's so many versions. Maybe I want to go by all URLs, or I want to break down URL types by X condition. They contain this subfolder. Aggregating it, how are we reforming that data to be meaningful? How are we sorting it? Do we want the most first? And limit. Limit is how you keep that beautiful trust that DevOps put in you in providing you with server log access. Before we go to the spirit board, we have to remember, as above, so below. The information that we expect to see in our site is valuable. We can drop assumptions, but still make meaningful observations, like, well, how do my URLs fall in IA? Do they have a meaningful structure to them? If I know consistently my language is always my first subfolder, and I know that products, categories, blogs, whatever subsection will always be the second, and then if the product, always have that manufacturer third, I can begin to look at these and go, there's a way for me to ask meaningful questions that aren't as painful as going through line by line and trying to just identify these manually. So what do we expect to see once we ask this spirit board? 20% of my site is blogs. Should it make up 80% of my crawl budget? Something might be weird there. What about 50% of my site is content, 50% of it is e-commerce? Where do I expect Googlebot to spend its time? What would be most useful to me and to the search engine and ultimately to users? Once we've done this little exercise in self-reflection, it is time for us to read the Latin. And these are going to be some ways to break down and parse that information. Just as you're first hopping in here, this is a very intro-level conversation, but ways to look at those large sets of data and make them meaningful without feeling quite so overwhelmed. So simplest one we can go with is, what are the most requested URIs? So I need to tell this query service, this one I just like a sample SQL, what I want, where I want it from, how to group it, how to order it. It's pretty simple. But if I know my most requested URIs and I see something I didn't really expect there, I see perhaps a rogue resource, I see a JS file, CSS file, something that, is being asked for way too much. Well, if I know that CSS file is on every page, well, why isn't it cached? I should just tell Google, hey, just grab this once and reuse it. It's fine. If it's exerting all that effort, then its crawl is not going to be healthy and effective, and that's going to reflect on my site because it wants a good ROI for what it's investing in here. I could go a little bit further down this. I could go, hey, what are the most requested sections of my site? Again, I'm stating where I'm asking from. I'm saying what the condition is. So I want this information to match Google. I want it to be Googlebot's organic. And in this particular example I've got right here, we had we had a whole team who was dedicated to these server logs, and they would create fields like bot name. So tapping into a very skilled and talented team, I was able to learn more and ask better questions. For this goal, we're going to actually parse out that URL. So I know that first section is always language. I know that second section is the meaningful thing I want. Well, let's go ahead and parse it by that second section. I want you to label that as app. I want you to give me the requests by the app, that second subfolder. And of course, limit how many you give back to me. By doing this, I can get great visualizations and see, all right, so my categories actually aren't most of my site. Products are, but oddly enough, the number one request is from API. Okay, what's going on here? Is that useful? Is it serving a purpose? Is it valuable? This could also be beneficial to us if we have a use case like, hey, Googlebot shows a different canonical than the user. You're the user. This is your site. You're supposed to have say over which one's the master copy. Something is afoot here. So let's dig in. If we made a query and ask for the host names, so what is the name? What is the domain name responding to this request? We can see maybe unexpected things like, oh, hey, my load balancer apparently just got public facing and no one told me it responds to this host name. And this can be valuable information. That's a real screenshot there. Scenario of being in-house with this enterprise around the world network. Just having your CDN, having your load balancer go ahead and usurp your primary domain is a real problem. All right. If we have a sudden flux in our crawl stats, if that weird line graph that the VP of something important looks at once every 6 months on Chicken Littles, what do we do? All right. Well, it doesn't look healthy. Down, line chart, mean bad. Maybe, possibly. Let's do a query. Let's see what the response codes are. So from my primary source, I want to find out what Googlebot's getting as a response code for its requests. 200, that's big and healthy. 301, we'll deal with those later. Okay, ooh, timeout's not great. Oh, hey, what is that 404 sneaking up there? Or 500. Because when you're working with really complex enterprise sites, there are different tools and functionalities located all over the place, and sometimes they don't know about each other, and they don't play well together. They're little grumpy scripts, like angry little beta fish. All right. We didn't have a clear answer from that first one. We could go even further. We saw 404 given up, something wasn't quite right. Well, I know Googlebot's going to pull back on its crawl if it's encountering a lot of service errors. Let's look at response codes matching that 500. I'm adding a second conditional statement, or a second where statement to my data source and saying, give me Googlebot organic, give me 500 errors. And let's check out my API endpoint. I saw that was spiked up earlier, and that didn't make a lot of sense. Well, look, it was steady, it was low, it was within a reasonable margin of error, then we had a spike. All right, now I know something's afoot. If we have, when we have the invisible challenge, if something that happens sometimes, but you can never seem to reproduce it, and when you try and tell devs about it, you get it works on my machine, well, that's a whole new beastie, but luckily, we're exactly where we need to be to identify what the problem is and to sort it. We can go ahead and get a count of those server errors by the server responding. When you're working with CDNs and load balancers, when you're working across large networks, things happen, things go wrong. When you're copying code out to a worldwide series, sometimes it's copied by copying a copy, which copies a copy of a copy, and information gets lost. Errors happen on some servers, but not on others. Remember in EO 03, that guy was like, I'm not doing AMP today, sorry, bye. And that's okay, that's to be expected, and we can fix it. We just need access to this information on a good channel of communication to the teams that can make an impact on how these are behaving. Your DevOps team doesn't want their servers down. You don't want their servers down. You guys are allies. On the trick here to all of this, as you venture into the spirit world and you try and communicate with the ghosts in the server logs, is to ask dumb questions and trust the spirits. As a tech SEO who's been in this game, I think it might be a time paradox. Like time actually moves faster when you're a tech SEO than it does in the outside world. So like one site launch is actually 7 years. I don't know what the exact math is, but you have to learn and trust that there are people who own this information already, understand it better than you, and sometimes things that don't make sense are there for a reason. So this is important. This might seem out of your scope. It might seem like something for those DevOps people or whomever is working on it. But your site health is your site health. It doesn't matter what type of user is making it to you. It doesn't matter whether Googlebot's requesting it or a real human. You all have skin in this game. Let's not focus on these theoretical pieces like link juice so much. Let's take this as an opportunity to learn about how this mass network of bots and humans and computers communicate. What are the literal technical things said between them to make X turn into Y to show up in a SERP and make you rank better and make everybody on your team feel like champions? Because when you work together, they will. When you catch something big by looking at these server logs and you're able to pass that over to a team who can enable and make action on it, instead of waiting for that weird, terrible flat line in that crawl stats report to explain to that VP of something important, you'll all feel like you've done a great job together. You've conquered something insurmountable, and it was fun, and you learned a lot. Skip on the link juice. Learn from each other. As a wise webmaster once said, may the logs ever be in your favor. My name is Jamie Alberico. Thank you so very much for joining me today. Be kind to one another, wear a mask, and I'll talk with you soon. Bye.